Mayor Insulaco.
Here.
Vice Mayor Eck.
Here.
Councilmember Barker.
Here.
Councilmember Deeds.
Here.
Councilmember Surtee.
Here.
Councilmember Severs.
Here.
Councilmember Wilson.
Here.
All members present. You have a quorum, Your Honor.
Discussion and presentation on concept and development for a regional council. And who would like to start this off?
Thank you, Mayor Insulaco. Thank you to the council for letting us speak tonight. We want to talk about a regional council, something to develop Gold Canyon, Apache Junction. And we believe that the citizens, the residents of Gold Canyon and Apache Junction have a lot more in common than they have differences. I think that they all want basically the same thing. They want more restaurants, more entertainment, movie theaters, outdoor parks and recreation. And the problem is how to get them. Gold Canyon has made some presentations to developers, and we find we have excellent demographics, but not enough population. Apache Junction has the population, and we should be looking at this as a region. Superstition Mountain region, whatever we want to call it, but the area north of 60 includes Apache Junction, Gold Canyon, possibly Queen Valley, as economic and regional problems, something to look at. We have a white elephant just south of us called Superstition Vistas that's being a lot of attention lately. Everybody has different ideas and there's a lot of fingers in the pot. But what we're not thinking about is what's north of 60, what we already have, what we can develop that we already have to make Apache Junction, Gold Canyon, Superstition Mountain a destination point for tourists. We have obviously the Superstition Mountains, its trails, its beauty. We have Goldfield, the mining camp, Superstition Museum, the park, all packaged as one destination point. You have Canyon Lakes and the Apache Trail, which everybody going there has to go through Apache Junction. We have the golf courses in Gold Canyon. We have Peralta Trails and the entrance into the Superstitions. These are things that we feel we should develop as a region, promote as a region, and bring people here. Other things that we can talk about that are concerns to both communities, things like solid waste, recycling, regional sewer systems. Anything that affects the people of both communities we feel should be included in a regional council. Brian Martin's going to make a presentation. This is one that we have used to present to developers, showing what we have out here. We've cut it down a lot and kind of combined it to show what we think we could do with both communities put together. So thank you for your attention. Brian will finish up on this and we'll take questions.
Thank you, John.
Mayor Insulaco, it's good to see you again.
Nice to have you back.
Distinguished council, thank you very much. It's good to be back, and we'll get a slideshow going here for you. If I can, there we go. Here we go. Apache Junction Gold Canyon Regional Plan. I'm not going to talk about sewage and such. I'm going to talk about economic development. I'm going to leave the political side out of it. There's no reason to go there right now. We need to start baby steps, and I think our baby steps begin with how do we get people back out to this region. We've seen with 60 since it's in here now, and with Signal Butte opening, the business has gone way down for both of us. People just aren't driving out this way, and they surely aren't going north on 60 like they used to. We know we have trouble with Walmart right now in town, so we need to start looking a little bit outside of what we've done normally. So a couple things just to show you, just to talk about real quick. We talk about regionalism, and I've got a couple things here. This is Mesa's information booklet. It says 101 things to do in Mesa. 101 things to do. Did you know that Apache Trail and Superstition Mountains is in Mesa these days? Did you know that Goldfield Ghost Town is in Mesa these days? Did you know that the Lost Dutchman State Park and Dolly Steamboat and Boyce Thompson Arboretum? You get my point. There are 12 items of 101 in here that are in our backyard. It's not Mesa. but they understand that that's what brings people out to this part of the country. In fact, this is the Mesa's map and guide. On the cover, the main picture on the cover is the Gold Canyon Golf Resort. Of course, it's not labeled as such, but it is. So we know, and Mesa knows, that we're sitting on a fantastic opportunity. This is why people come to this part of the state of Arizona. So we'll continue. I think I'm going to emphasize that bottom line there, united we stand. This is one of those things where we could probably go alone, each one of us. And again, I don't represent just Gold Canyon or any faction per se. I'm just presenting this plan out there. Either Gold Canyon could go it alone, Apache Junction could go it alone, and you'd probably be all right. But I think together, I think you'll see, put on your business hat, I think you'll see there's probably some benefit to trying to work together. This is the area we're going to talk about just a little bit up on your map there. You see it's pretty broad. It covers everything in Apache Junction, Gold Canyon, all the way down up into Queen Valley, Florence, Florence Junction, and of course you're all very familiar with this map. Look at that. We kind of shoot up north there, and we pick up Goldfield and the Superstitions as well. That's all our backyard. There's no reason to not include those entities as we talk about developing together. And of course, the map doesn't show it as it goes up, but you've got Tortilla down there, and then of course Canyon and Apache. If you want to talk about really think about using those a little more effectively. We came up with this in Gold Canyon. We wanted to try to figure out what Gold Canyon was supposed to look like. This is a little bit of history. It'll be short. We wanted to come up with a long-term, community-developed, comprehensive growth plan for the area known as Gold Canyon. And what did we define Gold Canyon as? Well, we'll hop ahead here. This is the area that we looked at. I'll define a couple things here for you. Gold Canyon's over here. This is about 10 square miles. Peralta Trailhead, the road that goes up to the trailhead here. This green area on the top, and you'll have to excuse me for having to turn your back, but the green area on the top is our national forest. No one's going to build there as long as the laws remain there.
Ryan, we have screens in front of us so we can see.
Okay, fantastic. Sorry, Merritt. Thank you. The blue area. The blue area, of course, you're very familiar with. That's known as state trust land, also known as to be sold at a later date. So, and this group understands that, and you're well aware that the community does not understand that. What started out as a great view in my backyard, in the future may not be such a great view. And we need to educate people on that. Nonetheless, we looked at this area as far as Gold Canyon per se. We're currently sit at about 11 square miles, and we looked at expanding this region out to about 58 square miles, not encroaching on Queen Valley to the east, allowing them their say until they decide what they want to do economically. And then down to the south, of course, you're familiar with the bypass. We're still not sure exactly where it's going to come in based on monies from ADOT, but we extended all our roads. We did Arizona Road Building 101 and extended everything along section lines, and you'll see the roads that actually intersect the area of Gold Canyon. And this was more for education for everybody to kind of get an idea, hey, did you know that Pecos Road comes into the south side of Gold Canyon, the Gold Canyon area? And then when you tell people, hey, your community right now is about 10 square miles, but it's going to be 58, a lot of eyes, big eyes, trying to figure out, wow, we're going to be big someday. We're going to be big someday. So we came up with our study. We wanted to figure out our borders, and you see the second bullet there, define the brand. That was pretty important. What do you want the community to look like? And as a young community, we're afforded that luxury. As an older, more established community as Apache Junction, you're not afforded the luxury as much, but surely you have a way to influence that, especially from where you sit. This is a big part of this presentation is pictures, because I believe, or we believe, that pictures really tell the picture of what you believe that you are. This is where we believe the community of Gold Canyon is today, and I'll go around this from 1 o'clock around. We believe that Gold Canyon exists with a fairly robust real estate market, some pretty nice homes in the region. We also have fantastic outdoor activities. Lost Dutchman is an event that we share, but nonetheless, it's something that we have out in our region. That's the Peralta Trailhead just down from there. Also have the Renaissance Festival. LPGA, that's Miss Ochoa. She won last night.
Is that Miss Ochoa?
Yeah, it is Miss Ochoa. She'll be out there next month trying to defend her title. That's the country club there. That picture represents the Gold Canyon Golf Resort, a staple of the community. We also have our trails out there, and again, additional outdoor stuff. And then at the top, the Gold Canyon Golf Resort. That's kind of where we're at with Gold Canyon. You'll notice there's not a whole lot of businesses. Jack Frost Gold Canyon Village is not on this picture. There's not a whole. There's no we didn't have a picture of Walgreens. We got one Walgreens, you know, and Best Western. So you're like, how would you define Gold Canyon? Probably not as an economic hub by any stretch. Pretty touristy right now. So we figure, well, is that where you want to be when you grow up? When you're 60 square miles, you want to be a community of resorts and Renaissance festivals? And there's some people had some input. We asked the community. We had a couple meetings. A few hundred citizens in the Gold Canyon area came up with this idea. And these are all ideas on paper. And you'll see some of them are things that are going to happen anyway. Grocery stores, yeah, we're going to get grocery stores. We're going to get gas stations. But you'll see other things on there. Olympic pools. Like, wow, Olympic pools. The national cemeteries, colleges, Center for the Arts. And so people are thinking broadly, and that was the exercise. And so what does Gold Canyon look like possibly for tomorrow? And I won't go through every one of these. But I will point out a couple things here. Gold Canyon, you'll notice we didn't lose anything on here, really. Everything that we had originally, we kept. And that's just the way I think Apache Junction would go. Hanging on to those good things that you already have. But we added some other things, and then, again, these are just tools for thought. There's our National Cemetery. You know our National Cemetery, we have one in Phoenix. It's built out at 2021. It'll be built out. I know a lot of veterans in this part of the state who would love to be buried at the base of the Superstition Mountains, myself included. We have some BLM land out there, too, that we might be able to figure out how to get donated. So there's some... We're looking long-term here. Of course, normal stuff, we got an Olive Garden. Of course, everybody out in that part of I think pretty much everybody around here would love to have something like that that's on this side of the county line. The Walmarts, this community right here, this thing I'm pointing to behind you is out of DC Ranch. That's a DMB developer that did the whole community. That's kind of what people want. They want the nice developments out there. I'm like, that's great. Here's your wish list. Show me what you want. And then the kids, a little more development with our kids, hospitals. Again, we all want that out here. Water parks, dog park. Look at that. Marta St. James liked that picture. There's a ball field up there. Now, that ball field right there represents a minor league complex or even a spring training complex. And then people are like, wait a minute. This is a wish list. Minor league spring training complexes are very large revenue-generating entities. And we all know that Pinal County needs revenue-generating entities. And then finally up on the top there, that's a master plan community out of DMB. Oh, and I'm remiss. The college. CAC provides an excellent opportunity for many of our young people, but we need more. If you want Intel, if you want General Motors, if you want the big guys to come out here, you need to provide highly educated employees. They'll pay for the first group to come out. They will house their plant. They'll pay all their engineers to move here. They're not going to do it twice. So you're going to get one generation of workers in here, and you have to have the ability to replace those workers. And how do you do that? You have the education base that replaces them. Right now, I think we're a little behind where we need to be in Pinal County. Now, Dr. Crow does a pretty good job of churning out qualified applicants coming out of ASU, but why are we paying money into his coffers when we could be doing it ourselves? So we either increase CAC or we provide other alternatives, but that's another topic altogether. But that's what Gold Canyon looked at. Where's Apache Junction today? As we look at this picture, you recognize many of these things. This is your background, your backyard. They're all good. There are some great things on here. Of course, you got Dolly Steamboat. You got a robust youth at football. You got a great program out there at AJ. Dr. Wyman's doing a good job out there getting that thing going. You've got these horses actually are at the Lost Dutchman days. You've got a great event out there, revenue-generating event that brings people out to your community. Those are good things that we want to embrace. Also, you've got Goldfield. Goldfield is a gold mine. out here. It really is. Whether Mr. Bob is making a ton of money or not out there, people drive through your community to get there. That's what makes that such a gold mine. And we need to emphasize that and continue to emphasize that. You got your skate park, which is a very wise investment, in my personal opinion. Anco is out here. You've got some great personalities out here as well that you need to emphasize. And then, of course, you got the museum up there and the new center, the library, and the complex. Very good investments, in my opinion. But this is about where you're at. You'll notice on there, I don't see a lot of economic development. I don't see Intel. I didn't put the Walmart on it because the Walmart right now is unwell. Starbucks doesn't generate a lot of revenue. The Harley-Davidson shop is a great shop. I hope he does a good business because right now that's probably one of your biggest moneymakers in your entire community. So you're healthy, but you're not as healthy as you could be, and that could be said surely of the Gold Canyon community. So where are we at today, both of us? As we sit together, if we start thinking together, you look on here and you're like, okay, yeah, there's a lot of good revenue-generating things here that get people out to our community, that provide jobs for the citizens of this community. And that's what we want. We want people to live, work, and play in Apache Junction, Gold Canyon. That's our end state. Spend your money here. Don't cross that county line. Spend your money here. Buy our gas, buy our groceries, go to Bob's and watch the gunfights. Those are the things that we want. But if you look on there, you still have those same problems. Economic development. We're still missing some pieces. So this is the last slide. This picture, I'm going to give you a minute to digest this. And you have papers on top of your desk there, that the same presentation. There is a lot to digest here as you look at this. You'll see many of the same things that you currently have, but you'll also see things that are thinking a little bit outside maybe your comfort zone, today's comfort zone, but today's comfort zone is not necessarily tomorrow's comfort zone as you grow. I'll start up top and we'll just rapidly move our way around. Look at that thing up in the corner there, excuse me, again, behind you. There, I put the Intel logo up there. Obviously, Intel is not mandatory, but anything of that revenue generating, lots of money coming in, and all the things that go with that. And how do you get those communities? Well, they don't just show up in your backyard. You got to go get them and sell them on your great community here. And again, we sell them on showing that we have the economic vitality, the regionalism that would bring them in. Gold Canyon does afford the community a little bit higher levels of income, which are something like a little higher educational level. Nothing against either community, but some of those things that they look for, Gold Canyon has, and the population, of course, Apache Junction has. So working together, we increase our demographics slightly, and we increase our chances of bringing revenue-generating entities out to our community. I'll talk about this one early. Look at that. As I point to it up there, up in the upper right corner, that, my friends, is a tram. Now, a tram may be counter to everything you've ever believed in as far as our mountains, and there's some legal ramifications. It is a national forest. But as you know, some of you know, I also sit on the Superstition Area Land Trust Board. And I'm not speaking for the board here, so I just have to point that out. I am not speaking for SALT in this capacity. But that's one economic tool that might afford you the opportunity to make this the destination, actually within the entire city of Phoenix. Those that have been to Palm Springs or possibly Albuquerque know that when you go to Albuquerque, you go up Sandia, you go eat at High Finance. I lived in Albuquerque for a year. That's just where you go. We know that Flatiron sits at over 5,300 feet, AGL, above or MSL. That's the highest point in Phoenix, without a doubt. That's the highest point. You can see the whole valley on a clear day from up that mountain. Not a whole lot of people are willing to hike the 4.5 hours to get up there. But you know what? I bet you'd take a tram up there and eat at a restaurant, at your restaurant, up on that mountain, and they would drive out there day and night and day and night, 365 days a year, through your community to get there. So, and you could do it. I'm not going to debate the ramifications of the environment and all that other stuff, but those are the kind of ideas. And we continue to emphasize the things that we've got. Jeep tours out there, I don't know that we emphasize those enough for both communities. Football, look at those condos. I know Mayor Anselaco is a visionary on these kinds of things. I honestly believe personally that you need to start embracing some of those ideals. You need to bring some properties in here that people are very proud of, proud to be a part of. And I think those kinds of things historically represent that, what we're looking for. Hey, look at your dog track. By the way, you got a great dog track out there. It's going to take a little bit of money. Ed's going to be busy. Bronger getting that place up. But that's a revenue-generating entity that we don't capitalize on. And that's tough to get to, don't get me wrong, but it's something that brings in money.
Sure does.
And I don't know that you want to be known as a dog track community, but if it's one little piece of your community that brings money in, as long as it's classy and all those things that we look for, I think you're healthy. I show this train down here. You know, you got track that runs up there to Superior. Pretty good track, really. It's not used, has been used in a long time. That's where getting with Resolution Copper, getting with those guys and say, hey, how'd you like to work up and down the superstitions there? Again, working with the communities, working with state trust land, generating developing a revenue-generating entity that benefits all the communities, including Superior there, all the way down to Apache Junction. And Bob would have his guys go rob the thing every other day if you wanted him to. So, I show the Disney down here. You know, we've been working since Apache Land went down. I know a lot of people have been around here a while. Apache Land actually brought some pretty decent revenue into the community. And back in its day, it brought a lot of money into this community. But we don't have that now. But we still have that same landscape that was that the filmmakers thought was good. And now you need a sound studio, a big sound studio. Well, I don't have any place to put that out in Gold Canyon, but guess what? You do. Revenue-generating entity that brings people out to the community again and again and again. And we still keep our hospital. We keep all those things out there. Together, if you look at this chart, compared to the last chart where today, this chart, this is a healthy community. This is a place where people will live, work, play, and die. This is where you live. This is your home. But you'll notice it takes both communities. When you combine them, it's very healthy. It's very healthy. And we have to work through some relationship issues. The animosity of the past that's been exhibited on both sides is intolerable. It's unacceptable, in my opinion. People in Gold Canyon are as fault as anybody. The attitude towards Apache Junction is wrong. And in the past, we've had some animosity from the Apache Junction side, and it is deserved. When your neighbors tell you that they don't like you, you generally tell your neighbor back, well, that's fine, I'm not real fond of you. I think we need to work past that. And this is the first step. This is the very first piece as we move forward and we try to get to the bottom line as united, we develop economically. I'll bring up a couple points and finish. You'll notice I never mentioned the A word or the I word. The A word is annexation. The I word is incorporation. That does not need to be on the table at all. In fact, it just turns people off, and excuse my vulgarity, it pisses people off. And we don't need to go there. That's counter to what we want to do today. That fight will come in the future when it's time. Now's not the time. But we can work together economically, aside from incorporation, aside from annexation. That has nothing to do, that has no impact on this path forward. So I'll leave you with that point. So I know that you'll be concerned, how are people going to perceive this? This is economic development for the region. And we will tackle those other 5,000-pound gorillas at a later date. But this is something we can work on today. So what are your questions, council members?
Good question. If you're not incorporated and you do start getting all this economic development, Where do those taxes go, that income go? Does it go to county?
Yeah, currently, there's no change in the county, in the tax structure within the county.
Do you get a percentage by
There is no
rent?
we. There is no we when you say Gold Canyon. You need to remember, Gold Canyon is nothing. Gold Canyon is an unincorporated area that generates revenue and generates, at this point, more
So it'd
liability
just be more of a benefit for your citizens?
of Pinal County.
Yeah.
Of Pinal County. The citizens of Gold Canyon will be afforded no additional revenues based on the fact that they generated them. The county still is responsible to spend those monies throughout the county. So the benefit for Gold Canyon is not as significant as you'd think. You make all that money, you know, we got all this great stuff, we make all this money for the county, and the wealth is spread. And that's the way the current laws are written. So,
You know, we had a spring ball field here
yeah,
at one time, at the Moose Lodge.
really?
The Moose Lodge is,
Houston Astros were here, we were one of the first ones.
yeah.
What year?
The 60s.
I'll say, I got here in '70.
They didn't draw a lot of people.
Oh, well, you're pretty far out. But that's...
It's just interesting when a lot of people don't realize there was a.
Well, as a baseball fan, that personally, I think that would be the coolest.
Yeah, I
Well, no,
agree.
there's so many more teams coming from.
Oh, yeah. Well,
from
it-
it's unbelievable.
if you've been out to the West Valley, we had the three-team complex, year-round three-team complex that right now has been graded. I was just out there a couple weeks ago. It's huge. And the revenues that are going to come out of that facility are unbelievable. Unbelievable. We could do something like that. We really could. There is a reason to move far east. The
You'll see
teams
a
can
lot-
support it.
A lot more of the teams are leaving Florida. Cincinnati just left.
Yeah.
So we would be taking money from all the East Coast states that go down to Florida and spend it now. They would then come out here to visit their teams like Chicago does. All the Chicago residents come out here, spend money in Mesa. The more teams we can lure from Florida, the more we bring into the valley.
If I'm not mistaken, I think it wasn't a Goodyear, I think it is. It's,
Oh, they're loaded.
Yeah, that's the complex. That's the
Yeah.
complex out there. It's huge. It is, again, and aside from all this stuff, everything sounds cool, but forget the cool aspect of it. Money. You need money. We need money. The county needs money. That's the bottom line.
You
You
know-
have to get this place healthy.
No night games.
You know, the thing is, you said about the dog track. Years ago, when I was in Globe, there was a bus company up there, Bob Mercer Bus Company. Every Friday and Saturday night, he had two buses come down from Globe. Come down the Globe, and I was one of the patrons. And Rotary, we used to, every Friday night almost, come right down to the dog track. A lot of money was brought into this community from not only Globe, Miami, because he stopped in Superior to go to the dog track. That is a money-generating thing, if that could ever get back. And like you say, that's here. All it has to be is refurbished and whatever, get on the ball and get it done, because that is a money-generating place.
I think besides just the financial aspect, I think becoming a regional council is going to give us a lot more strength in working against our little buddies to the west of us, you know, as far as future planning in the area and so on and so forth. We become much stronger in working together as a council.
Yeah,
Regional
Mr. Dietz,
council.
you're absolutely right. You have your work cut out for yourself. Superstition Vistas is far too important and potentially profitable for anybody in the community to leave to somebody who they don't think is equipped to handle it. Nothing against any communities out here. But you know you are up against, this community and Queen Creek are up against a very well-financed, very established entity in Mesa. And to actually compete for the right to say what happens to the land south of you, you must demonstrate the ability to do it effectively. And right now, I don't know that we're to that stage. It's not for lack of trying, that's for dang sure. But we need to definitely think, okay, how do we position ourselves so we're a player. You've got to be a player. There are billions and billions of dollars. I tell you, Mesa, 15 years from now, Mesa will be one of the wealthiest cities in the United States. As Williams Gateway or Phoenix Gateway expands and reaches its potential. So if you want to compete realistically, going south, you're going to have to throw some more armor on. You're going to have to get in the weight room. You're going to have to beef up a little bit.
Brett? Go ahead, then I was going to.
I was just thinking, based on those first two brochures you read, maybe we could start advertising for our Cubs Stadium, the Apache Junction Cubs Stadium in Brown, and our new Arts Center in
Tempe?
No, I don't think we went to Arts
Yeah.
Center. Cost too much. It's just the Cubs Stadium.
I'd just like to say that that is the best presentation I've ever heard anywhere.
Well, I appreciate
It was
that.
wonderful.
I appreciate
You
that.
simplified to the point that this is it. This is what we've got to do, and it's got to start now.
Well, I appreciate your candor and your insight. I also agree that this is it. This is it. And I cannot emphasize enough. This community, when I speak of the East Valley, will drive by your community. They will not go north unless there's a reason to. And right now, we have not given them a reason to turn to the north. We
Right.
have given them no reason.
Right. This would be a good chance to have Mr. Schuss come up, maybe share the podium with you, since he represents the north corridor towards the lakes.
I don't know if I want to share the podium with this guy. He took all my ideas from Goldfield and he wants to put them in Apache Junction. We have a Jeep tour. By the way, my name's Robert Schuss. I'm one of the co-owners of Goldfield, and I've built on it for about 24 years. And I'm really happy that the city of Mesa recognizes the tourist draw out here to the Superstition Mountains, because they've helped us through the years tremendously grow our place, because they had the foresight to realize that you guys have got a great attraction in your backyard, the Superstition Mountains, the lakes, and the Apache Trail attractions, which we've been, for the past, I believe, 15, 16 years, co-advertising among all the Apache Trail attractions. You guys have seen the Apache Trail attractions brochure, I'm sure, many times. And that's been one of our best tools for bringing tourists out here. Those things are all over the state of Arizona, and we get a real good return out of those brochures. And this should be nothing new to you. The city of Apache Junction spent several $1,000s. I'm thinking it was around $25,000 to $30,000 when Gene Perkins was mayor. In fact, it was I don't know if it was her first term or her second term, but she gave me that report. And in that report that had to be presented to you way back when, it said that the best things you've got going in your backyard is the Apache Trail, the Superstition Mountains, the views along the Apache Trail, and the attractions along the Apache Trail. Now that report, I used to have a copy of it, and I wouldn't even know where to begin to look for it, but apparently it's gotten buried through the years, because nobody really paid much attention to trying to help promote us. I mean, we've always supported your community. We sponsor the Apache, or the Lost Dutchman Days for I don't know how many years. We still do, even though the chamber turned it over to, most of it over to Superstition Promotion. And we do the Ben Johnson Days, we do the Chili Cook-Off, we do Lost Dutchman Days. The Clydesdales will be in our parking lot in about a week and a half from now from Budweiser, and they're going to go all around your community while they base themselves at our location. They go all around and do little things around the community for everybody that helps support the Lost Dutchman Day effort. And I believe they'll be in the parade again. I support a lot of the things he's saying, but we have Jeep tours. We have the Gold Pen. We have a train, which I spoke very seriously with Gene Perkins about running a track down the Apache Trail and put a station in here in Apache Junction. And you want to get sales tax revenue, sell the tickets here to go to Goldfield on round trips and stuff. We talked very seriously about extending the track at one time. I don't know about the tram. That's a tough one. That's not only national forest, that's a wilderness area. And to get a restaurant and a sewage system up there on top of that mountain, good luck. But I've always been interested in sharing, ways to better the community and work together to draw people here. there's been a mentality even with the chamber that the Main Street businessmen, or business people, let me say, I'm not too politically correct, trying to forget, but they thought, why should we promote things that are out of the city limits? Well, they don't realize that the people have to come through here to get to us, and they have to stop for gas, and they have to eat, and they have to do whatever they want to do, you know? They have to come through your community to get to us. And if you have some stuff that they'd be interested in stopping at to see and do, then they'll stop. But, you know.
Bob, wasn't there even some talk about us having our own currency out here where we could only spend it here, like the
Yeah, but
superstition dollars that you'd spend,
We've
you'd give them
done
and then
that.
they would spend for more money than $1 in your area and wherever, the whole area?
We've done that when Elaine Schrader was on the Chamber of Commerce. We had superstition nuggets. They were little gold nuggets on coupons that they could bring in and get dollars off and stuff. That kind of stuff's, you know, I think you got to look a lot bigger than those kind of little things. You do need to change some of the feelings that you've got between people in the outlying areas and differences of opinion between Gold Canyon. I wouldn't want to get annexed or annihilated either, because it just, annihilation. Yeah.
I like you,
I'd like
man.
to be immune to that. When I started talking about building Goldfield out there 24 years ago, that was one of the things. We had to come to your meetings here and get approval from you people, as well as the County of Florence, because we were in your sphere of influence.
6 miles.
And there was people that were, you know, pretty rude in saying that, you know, I have nothing against this project, but except for the fact that you're not wanting to build it within the city limits. And I told the man very straight up that if I was in the city limits, I wouldn't be allowed to build it, you know, because they wouldn't work with you on the building, making them look the way they look. You know, my buildings are all up to code, and we've got all our permits through the county and stuff, and they're perfectly new on the inside, but we make them look the way they look, and they do look old on the outside on purpose. But there's no way your city building inspectors would ever let anything like that fly. And that's the look that people come to Arizona to see. And you guys have slowly through the years been losing that look. You know, the old square down there that's the Bashes, is it now? Or what?
Yeah, it's nothing now. But
Well, yeah,
Bashes.
it's
Bashes.
that old look. I remember coming here in the '60s and seeing that old look, and that was Apache Junction. That was, you know, this was the old West, you know. I don't know what else. I'd be glad to answer any of your questions.
Any questions for Bob?
Well, Bob, I think you'll find that a lot of those negative people are gone now. We do have a whole new attitude up here,
Yeah,
which is
I
why
can
I've
definitely see
invited
that.
you guys.
And it's refreshing. I can definitely see that. And I'll be glad to sit down and talk to you about ways of doing it, but we do a lot of that cooperative stuff now with the Renaissance, we sponsor some of your golf tournaments over there. We do a lot of stuff with everybody.
George, I need a few minutes. Should I just stay here, or should I go down there? Okay.
We were going to take
Okay. Yeah, Bob, I got to apologize to you. When you first started building way back then, you don't even realize I owe you an apology, but I kind of thought it was going to be another cheesy tourist trap. But you had a long-term vision, and now after 20-some years, you're starting to see it. You know, and you've went for quality in the look and not just slapped it up quick, and it shows.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
Which
it.
brings us to what we were trying to do with our downtown, with the Grand area. You know, we got some negative press last week about we're just trying to make it pretty, and that didn't make us any money. But it goes way beyond that, because, like you say, anybody that's going up towards your direction is going to go through there. So especially since we've approved the shopping center down on Baseline in Idaho, we want to show that we're not going to ignore the downtown, and we want to make it a theme, the Western, and show you when you're here, you know that you're in Arizona. And,
Well, if I could just point out one thing, look at Scottsdale, 20-some years ago, and look at it now. And they still have their little area there, I forget what it's called,
Old Town?
Old Town.
It's Old Town.
Old Town, but there was the Fifth Avenue shop,
Fifth Avenue shop.
okay? And Scottsdale was billed as the most western town, yeah, for years. And I mean, they keyed off of that little western look area, you know? And, I'm not sitting here trying to tell you to do something like I did, that would be kind of like shooting myself in the foot. But they played off that.
Yeah, I've got some photos here of what downtown Tempe is doing, and it looks like turn-of-the-century San Francisco or Prescott, more like the Prescott Square. And, anybody that goes up there or to the lakes, unless they go to Roosevelt Lake and down the trail, they're going to come through here. So,
Well, we have people from all over the world visiting us. They always did. I mean, it seemed like the people from out of town that were coming in were finding us easier than a lot of the residents that live in Arizona. And that's always bothered me tremendously. But
and Ari, you asked what, I find like with the chamber just gives. They get their little dues back. But just by helping all the businesses, it eventually helps us all. So if we don't worry about, we don't keep score, well, we did more than them or they did more than us, it will come back to you. I mean, that's the thing of giving, is the more you give, you may not know it, but you will get it back someday. And if we help the Ghost Town will help us, and to the East Gold Canyon, it'll all come back to us, which is why I also want to talk in the future about our eastern entrance to the city, of when these 250,000 people go to the Renaissance Festival. It's so inviting to get up on those two freeway lanes and go to the restaurants at Signal Butte or Power and not come over here. So I want to clean that up down there, cut that brush, get rid of those fences, put a big sign advertising the Ghost Town this way, gateway to the lakes, show our restaurants, our hotels. And then when they come through there, they'll then see what we're doing at the Grand Hotel and making that all look like we want. So that's why it's important, and it was a shame that it got slowed down the last time. So
yeah, ADOT wanted to put an attractions sign up because we do so much advertising for the attractions on the trail. When they changed 60 from being the old West Highway to where it's at now, they have to get off on Idaho, and we've got signage, we've got attraction signage on the freeway. I don't know how many have noticed that. But once they get off the freeway, they wanted to offer signage at the forks there, which way to go for the Apache Trail, the attractions and stuff like that. They wanted to put up a signboard, and I guess that the city shot it down. And that's just counterproductive.
I don't remember shooting it down. How long ago was
Well,
this?
that's when they built the freeway. Were you on the council that long?
Oh, not when they built the freeway. No, I helped build the freeway, but no.
well, we
It was
need
right
that
after
from
they
both
completed the
entrances.
freeway, and people were getting lost because they didn't know the new way to get there. Stuff, and a lot of them get confused because it says Goldfield Road down there, and they all try and get off there, and they end up in the dash in lost, but he straightens them out, tells
So
them where to go.
that's where we can help. So you
Is
see,
there any other questions for Bob?
Well, just really to touch real quick on Jeff's comment, this whole thing of sprouting up your downtown where we expect our actual downtown to be, I don't see a problem at all with trying to sprouse that area up to where a developer is going to see that and say, hey, this is what this community is looking for, and I'm interested in this area, because it doesn't look like that right now. So we're just trying to make it look like something, so a prospective developer might say, hey, this looks like a place. And, of course, we have a TIF area there, which I don't know if you're aware of, where the tax incremental financing goes back into that area. And we got a lot to offer in our downtown Patsy Junction. We just got to educate.
I come down here and eat in your restaurants, you know.
Yeah.
And I buy fuel here, and I shop at Home Depot and all the other stores.
That's not ours.
I don't play musical instruments.
You know, the thing is that you leave Gold Canyon, they've got whatever they've got there in their little area, their little commercial area, and then you get to the freeway, which is true, and then the old highway, the way 8 out left it, you know, we pull off, there's Apache Junction, and it looks like you're going into nowhere.
A dead zone, yeah.
It's a dead zone. And then you, thanks to the state, they got that pile of dirt right there in the middle of, you know, who wants it? It's not, and you don't need beauty, you just, even if they take that fence down and take that dirt and flatten it out, if they need it for later on, don't have to have a mountain of dirt in one.
Well, if you wanna get rid
we
of it,
need
I
help
can use it up there.
from just us to beautify that entrance, or I hate the word beautify, but to make it look more pleasing to people to get off and shop there. And signs and something, you know, of even picture signs, anything.
Should
Goldfield
have
Hills,
welcome
whatever.
to Patsy
So that is
Junction.
an area that I believe that we'd all probably be, I'm hoping we'd be interested in fixing up, to get them off the freeway and let them come downtown. Any more questions for Bob?
Well, it won't be so bad in the freeway in another 2 years or so. Year and a half, 2 years. But, I wish we had a sign that at least said, welcome to Apache Junction. We don't even have that.
Excuse me. We just had an opportunity to have that, and we shot it down.
We did?
Yeah, under the Carl's Jr. sign. He wanted to put a big sign that said,
Oh,
"Welcome to
no,
Apache Junction."
man, I'm talking up by Silly Mountain, Barkley Road, where our community begins.
By the time they're on the freeway, it's too late.
It's too late.
Yeah.
It has to be in the beginning. Bob, thank you very much.
Very welcome, thank you.
Brian?
My pleasure.
Well, I think we got a chance to gain some allies here, and we'll throw in with them. George, what would be our next, this is a work session, we're talking about it, what would be our next step to make this more closer?
At some point, you could kind of flesh out the concept of how such a regional council would work, how you'd like to see it constituted, begin thinking some operational issues about how you'd make that group a reality, and give direction, and we'll make it so.
I think it's imperative that we work together with the community organizations, including the Chamber of Commerce, since we are talking economics. I think that's our number one ally, besides yourself. The council is the number one ally in this program. The Chamber, and then who are you going to get to represent Gold Canyon? Gold Canyon doesn't have any government other than the supervisor, current supervisor. There are some organizations within Gold Canyon, you know, we have the Gold Canyon Business Association, we have Adobe, those things. I think the Gold Canyon Business Association is the most realistic representative of that community, but it will be incumbent upon the Business Association to ensure that they represent the majority of the community and not just a few activists. Activist is a dirty word, but a few people who are involved. So there's going to be some work on both sides. We need to be very careful that we don't come up with Brian's plan or, you know, Mayor's plan, that these are communities working together. And I think with the help of the press, as we push this program forward, we make it known that these communities are working together, and it's facilitated by the visionaries that currently sit in the seats that are in front of me. I think that's a fair statement. If you push something like this forward, I think you could easily be classified as visionary, because we haven't seen this cooperation, we haven't seen this economic development, we haven't seen this forward thinking in this part of the county for a long time, and there's no doubt that it's needed to keep everybody. Bob's got a great place up north. If nobody turns right, nobody turns north, Bob's going out of business. So The way this project goes, the way Apache Junction goes, is the way Goldfield will ultimately go. So it's important. There's a lot of revenue-generating things, and your citizens will benefit, all your citizens within the region will benefit, and the revenue dollars that come into Apache Junction surely will help, and those dollars that go into Pinal County, talk to people that pay property taxes.
I do.
Unincorporated, so you know.
I'm a native, so.
So you know it's crazy. Our tax base is out of control in Pinal County, unincorporated. This is one of those things that will help everybody. So it's not someone saying, well, they're just doing it for their own good, for HA's own good. That's not the case. That is not the case. You are showing that you are being a good neighbor. You are looking out for the welfare of all these entities. And ultimately, the community of Gold Canyon actually doesn't have as much to gain as a place like Apache Junction, because those revenues are spread throughout the county. But our business owners in Gold Canyon will ultimately benefit from the increased population that comes out to our region.
Quality of life's used.
So this is the first step. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to at least present. I know you're a very busy group, and you have a lot of things going on, but I really do appreciate the opportunity to talk today. I look forward to future dialogue facilitated by the Gold Canyon Business Association and the Chamber of Commerce. I would recommend that those two entities be your conduit as we work through this. Do you have any other comments for myself or a representative from the Business Association? Here is Mr. Enright, and then Ms. Palmer is here as a representative from the Chamber. Thanks for your time.
And I'd like to ask my fellow council members, if you guys have any ideas and you want me to communicate to anyone, and then we'll come back with direction to staff and how we want to do this. So just feed me all your ideas, and we'll make it come out as one good project, I hope.
Yes.
I'd like to encourage the entire council and staff to start thinking along this new philosophy a little more in every decision that we make. Recently, we modified the sign ordinance for freeway signage, and we completely eliminated the possibility of anybody putting anything on the signs that is not directly related to their business. If we had a big monument sign on the freeway, Bob could have an advertisement on it for Goldfield Ghost Town to get people off the freeway and direct them to his town. But we made it so that is not possible. If we were looking at things and could this possibly help our community or benefit this community in any way whatsoever, or our surrounding communities, in every decision that we make, I think that we get to that goal a little bit faster.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. John, thank you very much. Is there anything you want to say anything else?
I just asked
before we take a 5-minute break that Vice Mayor needs.
I find it somewhat interesting that some of the problems you're talking about today here are exactly the same things we're talking about in Gold Canyon, freeway signs. We're trying to get ours up and get our monuments out there. So this is the first step. I hope we can take it and work together. Thank you.
We've been talking before, so.
Yes.
Thank you. Let's take a, George, you got anything else on this subject?
No, sir.
Good, let's take a 5-minute break.
I got that, but I didn't really take that as to ideas as to...
Music is, that's great, it's very great. Yeah.
You know, I kind of figured
Saturday night, so we go over there. So this is one
especially tomorrow night.
In the morning.
Well, yeah, and I don't think.
Okay, that was my question, is, how, what do we do, how do we do it?
I don't see, I don't want to see this.
That's the same questions, I guess.
Hi, Rob, how are you? Good, I was there for the train. Yeah.
riding in the station.
Yes. More fun than it's It was, we had a great time. You locked me up in jail, too.
Those were fundraisers.
They were fun days, too. They were.
We get up there. Then I call back. She says, on this side of 6th Street, there's a shelter. Oh, that's the one over there. We'll spend $600 on it. We take off, go down there, and we don't know where it is. We spend 15 minutes. So I call him, I said, can you head north? I said, yeah, okay, well, we head north.
Johnny didn't even get it.
Gosh. Close come to an end. What do I do?
Boy, you guys were just.
He ended up being at the show stand.
You didn't even hear it, did you?
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Who are we missing? We're missing two people.
Robert and Jeff. No, I'm not saying that.
Well, guess what? Discussion on a city council community outreach plan for 2008, 2009.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'll go ahead and start if that's okay, Mayor. One of the priorities of Mayor and Council at the June 2007 retreat was to strengthen relationships with internal and external community partners. Now that is very broad, so based on the input that you had provided during the retreat, what we're going to do this evening really quickly is try and talk about each group individually so that we can decide how we would like to strengthen relationships with that particular group. Okay? And what we're going to do is, in the outreach plan, we'll look at 5 groups: the boards and commissions that serve Apache Junction, the other boards or councils in neighboring communities, involving the community as a whole with the City Council, local neighborhood or civic groups, and legislators from our districts. And the first, we'll look at the Apache Junction boards and commissions. And what I'm going to do is I have provided copies of the PowerPoint to you, and then tomorrow evening we can go through these again and get some direction to staff on what we would like to do with each of the groups. The first are our boards and commissions, and have an idea of what kind of a meeting format you would like to see with your boards and commissions. For example, the matrix that I've also provided to you here provides a breakdown by quarter, and for example, for the April to June quarter, we might perhaps set up a meeting with the Planning and Zoning Board. Now, what kind of a meeting you'd like to have? Would it be more of a social gathering type of meeting where you get to know the members of the board, or would it be a business issue related type of meeting, or another format? Additionally, the time and location of that meeting. Would you like to have a roundtable discussion on your regular work session or council meeting night, but have it at a place where you could have a roundtable discussion, like a meeting room at the Multi-Gen, or would you like to have it here? So there's lots of different options in meeting with your boards and commissions. And then additionally, once you had met with all your boards and commissions through the next 18 months or so, would you consider having an annual event where you get together with all of them at the same time and do sort of a thank you dinner perhaps, or lunch, or some kind of an annual event? So that's another alternative as well in strengthening your communication with the boards and commissions. Another thing to consider is other boards serving Apache Junction, such as the Fire District Board, the Sewer Board, the School District. So these are other boards that are serving our community. Again, we'll talk about the format that you would like for the meeting to be, and also consider a time and location for that meeting. Would it be here in the council chambers? Would it be held, depending on who wanted to host for that evening, would it be held on a night that particular group normally meets. So there's lots of different options to consider. The next group that you had identified in the retreat was just the community at large, strengthening your communication with individuals that live in the community. And during the retreat, what was mentioned was that you might consider finding ways to invite folks here to your council meetings. And with that, would you not only ask them to attend, but would you ask them to speak at a meeting? Or perhaps acknowledge a community group at a meeting if they were here. Another option might be that one or more of you would attend community events out in the community on other days other than a council meeting to strengthen those ties. So there's lots of options there, and of course it's wide open, and I leave it for alternative formats or locations there for this group as well. Continuing on with internal partners are the neighborhood and civic groups that are already in place in our communities, such as the Horsemen's Association or established neighborhood groups that have, for example, a homeowners association. Groups that have already been gathering on a regular basis. In order to strengthen ties with them, how would you want to do that? Again, considering what the goal of that meeting would be for both that group and yourselves, and time and location again.
Can I ask a real quick question of Joel here? Joel, on the neighborhood groups and what we might want to discuss, would that be an area where we might be able to talk to them to say, if your wall's graffitied, can we paint it? Or do we have to have something specialized, letter or something in order to do that?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Vice Mayor Eck, we currently do have educational neighborhood meetings. I think that's what you're asking, and we do.
I'm just trying to get the wall painted on Ironwood. It's been graffitied for about 8 months.
What happens is Pat Brenner is ahead of those meetings. I attend most of them, and graffiti questions come up. Pat would take note of it and would pass it to the appropriate person, and then a letter would go out to the community. Anybody who showed up to the community would get a letter back saying what was done with their request.
The appropriate person.
Pat would either send it to the chief or to Brad or to whoever the particular item was pertinent to.
Okay. So we still need to discuss further if we're going to have our own possible graffiti program within our city, obviously.
Well, we have a graffiti program within the city. There is a protocol that we currently go by. In fact, I just worked with Interim Chief Kelly on the protocol, and we finalized it.
Is it the spray wash thing?
Yes, it is, and the procedure on how to report, who gets the reporting, what public works involvement is, what code compliance involvement is. So that's already been worked out.
Okay. I was just concerned. It's popping up more and more. I know we've all been educated. Graffiti, you try to get rid of it as fast as can, and it's how you try to control it to the best of your capabilities. But I figure we need their permission to use their wall. Thank you.
Mayor and Council, I'll go ahead and continue. The external partners that you'd like to strengthen ties with include joint council meetings with neighboring communities, such as Queen Creek, Florence, Mesa, our own Pinal County Board of Supervisors, Town of Superior, and more, whichever you find that you'd like to meet with. And I'd like at this time to turn it over to George to discuss the Queen Creek, Florence, Apache Junction idea.
I saw Mayor Rankin at Mayor Florence recently. He tendered an invitation to you to meet with their council and that of Queen Creek. He offered to host it. I indicated that based on discussions you were having on this subject, that I thought you would be excited about that. We didn't pick a date, just hadn't talked to you about it.
Sounds good.
That would be here, right? We don't want to drive.
He offered to host.
That means there.
And again, for a meeting like that, would it be on a regularly scheduled work session meeting, or would it be a completely different night depending on when they could meet? So there's lots of logistics involved with each meeting.
I would think that some of these,
Yeah, it's gonna be hard to go on regular meetings, and
Kathy's pointing out that it's a significant, if you're going to work to build relationships within and outside the community, that it's a big commitment. Time commitment. You're all busy, you're all working council. Almost all of you working council.
Yeah.
He was shaking his head, not me.
And again, so those factors would play into having meetings with external partners as well. And then our other external partners that you had mentioned you wanted to strengthen ties with is the legislators that represent our district. And again, would you invite one legislator to a meeting? Would you possibly have a joint meeting with all our legislators? Another format? So there's lots to think about on how you would want to strengthen relationships with our legislators. And one other external partner that you had mentioned in your retreat was strengthening ties with Gold Canyon. And I did not specifically list that here because I knew you were talking about that immediately before this discussion. So that is part of that whole outreach plan effort, would be included in that as well. And for now, I'm going to plan to come back tomorrow evening, but I'm happy to answer any questions right now.
Any questions for Ruth?
I know.
Yes.
When I had made a suggestion, the planning was possibility during Lost Dutchman days of securing a, I call it a city tent, if you want to call it, city whatever, where some of us from the council would be there during the day, as well as someone from, like, for example, planning and zoning, animal control, police department, even the city management. Have we done any ideas considering that continued it on, or is it?
we better put that.
Are you
top
talking
on
about the
list
fairgrounds?
Yeah.
Out at the fairground?
Right. During the entire time, you know, they're there. So that way you.
It's a great idea.
I thought
Yeah, we have a booth out there.
We've done that.
Yeah.
Has there ever been anybody at it?
Yeah, that's always there.
I've never seen
But getting other.
Okay.
Is it something that, I guess I should ask Joel, is there any problem with us doing that? Not necessarily all of us being there present at one time, but.
Couldn't have more than three, right? Oh, Joel could just stay there the whole weekend, and we'll be all right.
Joel and Kathy be there to take notes?
Nope, Kathy won't be there to take notes.
Settles
You would
that.
have to post it if you're going to have a quorum or more. if
Couldn't we
that's the
just
plan.
have us in shifts?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, you just can't have more.
That's
than
what we used to
We've done
do,
that
was
before.
just in shifts,
Yes, we've done
2
that
to 3 max.
No open meeting law if
Right.
you don't have a quorum there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
so
simple.
we
Survey
wouldn't need
forms.
to.
And if you
post
use some
anything we're doing.
staff and that,
Suggestion forms.
So I know there's been a lot of questions to me, that have come to me on, from example, planning and zoning, about different issues, and I'm referring them back to planning and zoning because I don't know. I think that would be an opportunity that not only us to reach out, but also the whole community, the whole city government to be there present to, in some way or another.
You can direct the city managers to make sure that applicable staff or any staff members you want be at the Lost Dutchman days.
It'd be a good way to get some community input.
suggestion, Bob.
To do we need to do that as tomorrow in a motion, or do we?
Probably.
Can we do it just simple
I-
correction?
Well, it's not on the agenda, but
Tomorrow about a community outreach program.
I think
Sounds
that-
like a form of community outreach.
I think it would be covered.
It would tie in with one of the groups that we wanted to target, and that's just the community at large. And one of the ideas listed was to attend community events, so that would.
I think it is a component of that general idea, so I think you could do it.
Okay.
Your Honor.
Yes.
It was probably a year or so ago, I came up with the citizen recognition program that I suggested to council, and it never got anywhere. But in that program, we would send out invitations to different groups within our community. And I hadn't thought about this portion of it. It was more so as a way to recognize groups in our community for the outstanding performance as members of this community. But what I was thinking here is if we were to start, maybe start this program, the recognition program, Pat Brenner had new City of Apache Junction postcards made up, which has got our new city hall on it. They're beautiful. My original idea was to send out approximately 100 invitations to every other council meeting to a certain group. The first one I had suggested was the education group. Get everybody in our community that has anything to do with educating our children. Invite them to a meeting, bring them here, present them with an award, just thanking them for what they do. But I'd like to go one step further, where there would be a time where they could speak if they wanted to. They could present to us their concerns, their thoughts, ideas, needs, wants for this community. If we did that in groups of 100, we'd get some pretty good response. We'd get some pretty good input as to what's going on, what our community wants, what are our community needs. And it'd be an opportunity for us to say thank you to several members of this community. I'd like to see if we could do something with that.
Yes.
I think we could also do something similar for our neighborhood groups.
Mm-hmm.
I think I have that written down too. So recognizing the groups that work very hard and they meet with the city staff. I know that, and unfortunately we are a working council, and most of those meetings are early in the morning, and most of us can't make those as much as we might like to. So that would be a way for us to meet them too.
Those would be excellent internal ones. I know we're going to have to trim this down, obviously, and
that would take care of some of it, though.
I really think we overlook the, as far as our local legislatures, because I think they can help us out in a lot more ways than we realize or fully access them. So
I'd love to invite them to speak at a work session.
We're gonna have a
dinner round table.
One time, maybe a multi-gen or something, to where we can all get together and we can all sit down and have a discussion on the issues that we feel very important to the community.
Okay. If you're going to do that in session, the league always makes their offices available, and they will gladly arrange for a legislative day. I think you might get better attendance if you were to go to Phoenix as opposed to asking them to come here.
Well, after all, they do
Won't
represent
be able
us.
to do that.
I know.
We're doing it
It
before the
really
session
precludes.
starts.
Most of us.
Yeah, most of us won't be able to attend something like that. Therein lies the rub.
Yeah. So.
But to have a legislator speak at our work session, just one, not ask for the whole crew, one at a time, just to update us on what's going on that concerns us here in the east part of the valley, and what they see, where they see the session going for cities. I think that would be
could be interesting.
I would appreciate that update from all of our legislators.
Both sides of the aisle.
Both sides. I would like to hear it from both sides. I would, definitely.
Your Honor?
Yes.
Just brainstorming an idea on, and picking on something that was suggested earlier, was maybe have a session that would start, instead of having a meeting starting at 7 o'clock, let's start it at 6 o'clock and have it as basically a round table over Subway. or sandwiches or whatever.
Georgia fine?
That way, yeah, that way we can
At least once, apparently.
talk with them on the, I'm going to say, the leisure, and instead of a formal, and then follow it up with our work session where he is invited, he or she, they are, there we are.
Yeah.
They are invited to speak to us, but just having it so they talk to us, I have a feeling they wouldn't necessarily be getting, we wouldn't be getting to know them, and they wouldn't be getting to know us.
What if I thought
Something
you-
like this would be an opportunity for kind of discussions.
Maybe at the multi-generational center, and just sit down and have a casual whatever.
Do something.
This is the perfect
It can't
type-
really be a real work session, because then the community really
No.
can't be there and,
No,
you know what I mean?
well, there's a quorum of the council,
Yeah, the
or
community
quorum
will
of
have
any
to
board
be
or
welcome.
commission. It's open to the public
Absolutely.
by virtue of law.
Right.
Plus, there has to be an agenda and posting a notice of the meeting. So,
But these are the practical, logistical things that you're exactly on track, and our hope is tomorrow night, you'll go down through the list that Ruth provided and say, okay, this is how we want to handle the boards and commissions, this is how we'd like to handle the outreach to the other cities and so forth.
Your
And
Honor.
I encourage you to do as Kathy did, there, you add these up. There's a significant time commitment, you're already giving substantially to the community. So please do it with an eye towards a realistic, sustainable commitment, and then we'll implement it.
There's no way we can do all.
Well, that's one of the nice things about maybe incorporating a work session into this, even if it is a round table dinner with the public there too, type discussion. Even if that's what occurs, at least we've managed to incorporate it into a time that we've already allotted.
Your Honor.
Mayor and Council, one other note too is that this timeline can be extended. I mean, we did a 2-year,
Yeah.
but, we could, if you extend it, you can still see people after 2009. Still have
Realistically-
outreach after
I
2009.
don't think it's gonna be that
Your
difficult.
Honor.
We're looking at one per quarter.
Jeff?
Or,
Yeah, Matt, I know you're watching in the other room. Would you have the capabilities of broadcasting that? If we chose to broadcast it, that would get the whole public involved. So.
He said yes.
I heard that.
We heard it from the
Yeah,
multi-gen
I got a
center,
question. If we had I'm going to say a dinner, and all of us are there, how do you, and I'm asking for the open meeting law, how do we do that in the open meeting law to meet the requirements?
You just agendize it and post it, and you can certainly do it. We've done it before.
We've done it with Mesa, we've done it with Queen Creek.
Yes, we have.
we did it with,
So would they all be open to the public?
Yes.
Would they be able to attend? Would they be able to?
The public can show up. Now, if it's on the agenda that they can speak, then they can speak. But if you don't put it on the agenda for call of the public, then you don't have to.
Now, could this be on a work session
Yes.
that is not our regular work session? Could it be?
It would be a work session.
Opposite
well,
night?
couldn't it be just?
Yes, you
like
would have to have a
Thursday
special,
night?
you would have a special meeting.
Just a special meeting is all it is.
Yeah, you'd call for a special meeting. It'd be in, yes. We've done it with Mesa and Queen Creek, and is that the only two entities in the last
Well, and
10 years?
You have a
We had
regional
Candy
meeting.
tonight.
And when we did the Chamber of Commerce, we did the same thing.
Your Honor, what we usually do on the agenda is we cover all the legal things, and then we put a footnote that says that the public is invited to attend, but will not have the opportunity to speak. And then we also say that meals will be provided for
The participants.
participants, and the public will have to make their own meal accommodations. And if there's travel involved, such as if we were to go to Queen Creek or something, the public would have to arrange their own transportation.
Okay.
Your Honor.
Yes.
One of the things that came up recently on council was the BLM land, our fairgrounds. There was a lot of uncertainties about what we can and cannot do there. I'd like to have a meeting with the BLM and state trust land representatives to find out what are some of our possibilities for the land surrounding our community. Some possibilities that we don't know about.
That'd be awful hard to get them to cooperate with it.
Well, you'd never know if you got the right people.
That's right.
Right.
You never know if the answer was.
Good idea, Joe, but it'd be awful hard to get them. That's stretching it.
Yeah.
Is there anything else?
Do we plan on having another town hall anytime soon? Is that on there?
I've been asking that for a year.
We can add it on there as
Well,
another
something we've talked
communication
about
tool.
for a year or two.
You have scheduled, I think it's for the fourth quarter of the fiscal year, a discussion about capital facilities planning. And I need to make note of this tomorrow night. There's some people in the community chastising the mayor for a bond vote. All that was a discussion about exploring whether pay-as-you-go or bonding made more sense. So all that would be within the context. Councilmember Deeds has been a champion of, we need to start thinking about CFP 2.
Right.
Okay, when we get this one done, this 10-year cycle done, to begin thinking about what are the capital needs, the infrastructure needs for the community for the following 5 or 10 years.
But we can start this process now.
Right.
So as you talk about that, one of the things that a previous council did was to say, let's get input via a town hall. You might choose to do that again via town hall, or you might choose to have a town hall on some other subject. But
I was just thinking that we need to have a council meeting that is more of a goal-setting session, a vision. What are we going to do for our downtown, for our area?
We just did that.
Well, what was it?
In June or July, wasn't it?
What's the vision for our town?
You know what? If you want to give me quarter by quarter, we did about 25 different things, but we keep getting off track of those things, so we ain't getting nothing done.
Right.
Yeah, we're talking about other things, too many other things. We need to stay on a track.
That's what I'm saying. We need to set some specific meetings. If we were to have a goal session meeting, then possibly a town hall where we can discuss what the community wants, what are their ideas, and then we have another council and staff meeting where we could narrow it down, focus a little bit, create a vision. You know, then we have our all boards and commissions meeting where we can give direction and a mindset to our boards and commissions as to this is our vision, this is the direction that we want to go in. That way our boards and commissions know what we're thinking and where we're coming from. You know, and then shortly after that, a council staff meeting, work plan follow-up. You know, is how are we doing on this?
I've been in about 4 of them.
And?
Any more for Ruth?
No one wants to tear
Ruth,
on
thank you.
that.
See you tomorrow.
We'll see you tomorrow night. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
No one wants to tear that.
What's that got to do with it?
That's what
Discussion on intergovernmental agreement with the City of Mesa for law enforcement recruit training.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I can handle this one, unless you have questions for Mr. Kelly. However, this is a very quick item. All this is a standardization of the current language for training with Mesa. We have a current agreement I wrote. It was negotiated. However, the agreement that you see was actually done through the Arizona police chiefs. It's something more that Mesa wants because it's more friendly to Mesa. So some of the language I do not like. However, in order to continue our relationship for training, this agreement will pass legal muster. And that is it, unless you have specific training questions, what the type of training.
Out of our realm.
Okay.
That's the man.
I agree.
I do have a question, I'm sorry. It says parties shall agree upon a reasonable fee that the non-host agency shall pay to the host agency for training that falls within this agreement. Is this something that we've been doing all along?
Yes, it has, under some different terms.
That's what I thought.
This is friendlier to the host agency, which is Mesa, but I think this is the language they want. And I think the language we have is, I think we did that in the summer of '06. And it was a continuing relationship we do have with them. I'm okay with the language, however, it's not the way I would have written it, but I'm not the city of Mesa city attorney, so.
Your Honor.
Okay, thanks, Joel.
Your Honor.
Yes.
I'd asked this before, and I don't remember the answer I got. What is the possibility of us ever considering starting our own training session here? Where if we could get it going here, possibly other cities would use us to train.
You would probably need more in the budget, quite a bit more. Is it possible? Yes, but how much do you want to allocate for that particular activity? It's measuring what your priorities are.
How much are we spending paying for this to Mesa?
I don't have that budget information. I'm not sure Mr. Kelly does. You want to address that?
Pretty low, pretty low.
What is it?
Currently, we've been using Mesa quite a bit for our basic academy, and then any AZ post training. It's pretty minimal. Some of the fees that they would come across, we know up front, so we know if we're going to spend $500 for a registration fee or whatever the additional attachments are. So those are types of things we can either approve or disapprove when that training opportunity would come up. So as far as what we're spending to set up an academy like Mesa's got, not now.
But I know that's not something we can do right now, but how much does it cost us to get a recruit through the training?
Actually, the last couple ones, the police chief has waived the fees, the general fees, so we've been pretty much going through it as long as we attend through it, so without too much attention, we might want to.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
In other words, the Chicago way, be quiet about it.
Discussion of state mandated air quality control measures. Shane?
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, council members. Thanks for being here this Monday. I do have a presentation here, and I also have some guests from Pinal County who will help me here tonight. Okay. My name is Shane Kiesel, Public Works Manager. We're talking here tonight about a dust, very exciting issue, especially on a day that we have a lot of rain. So we'll try to go through this efficiently and as quickly efficiently as possible. In your packet tonight is a draft ordinance. I'm not sure if you've had time to review it or not, but this is a result of a state unfunded mandate. I think the last 2 times you guys have seen me, I've been up here because of unfunded mandates. But again, I'm before you regarding a state unfunded mandate that passed January 1st, 2008. It has to do with a bunch of control measures have to do with PM10 or dust. In that ordinance, you'll have about 4 different measures that have been passed down through the state legislature to the cities. We also have some other control measures that we do have to implement as a city as well as, for example, in our operations. In this presentation, at the beginning here, Don Gabrielson, Director of Pinal Air Quality, he will talk a little bit about the background of what led up to this ordinance here today, giving you a little bit of background of PM10, Apache Junction area of Pinal County. And then also I'll step in and talk a little bit about Senate Bill 1552, which is that latest legislation. And then he'll finish off talking about some overlap areas where we have some, it's interesting legislation, and then we have some overlap in jurisdiction. Don and I have worked for the last couple months with that draft ordinance to make sure we get the same legislation in there. Dust has no boundaries. It makes sense to make sure we have some ordinance that's very similar to Pinal County. They have enforcement authority on a couple of those sections in incorporated areas, just like this ordinance would have. So the city wouldn't want to be asking people to do one thing, and the county comes in a day later and asks them to do something else differently. So it's very important that we work with Pinal County on this. So Don will so kind of be able to make it here tonight, and he'll talk a little bit more in depth in the background. He's been with Pinal Air Quality for almost 10 years. He deals with this every day. I don't, so he is a local expert here that's willing to talk with us here tonight. So Don, if you want to, I'll get you going here. this right here.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, good evening. I'm Don Gabrielson. I guess Shane and I are working a tag team presentation this evening. With all deference to the Supreme Court, and it was at Jacobellis versus Ohio, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it, is the situation with dust. We're talking about PM10. This is something you can see in contrast to the other pollutants, most of which you can't see. And you've got a little illustration up there. One is from Cottonwood Canyon Road, south of Florence Junction. The other one is out on Whitlow Ranch Road. It illustrates the situation that we're talking about in a nutshell. The Clean Air Act, this is old news for the most part, at least the topic in general. In 1970, Congress told the EPA to protect public health, protect against nuisance. They're supposed to protect public health with an adequate margin of safety. The EPA, in turn, designates whether you meet the standards or don't meet the standards. You get designated attainment or non-attainment. And the Clean Air Act really imposes primary responsibility on the states. That is, they need to go out and monitor and do a self-assessment to figure out whether or not they're meeting or violating the standards. If you don't meet the standards, you need to adopt a plan to fix it. The EPA doesn't come and tell you what the solution is. It's your obligation to figure it out on your own, which of course is not oftentimes a joyful process. The package that gets submitted to the EPA is called a State Implementation Plan. The State Implementation Plan in Arizona really consists of a three-layer cake, if you will. There are state statutes. The legislature jumps in and tells people to do things like auto emission testing. There are local rules and ordinances that are adopted. We've got a whole wad of air quality rules in Pinal County. One of the things you're discussing tonight is a series of city ordinances to address some of these issues. Now, this is being mandated by the legislature, so they are demanding that you do the dirty work, if you will. And beyond that, there are also local commitments. I know that both the city and the county went through some commitments regarding paving that were submitted to MAG and onto the EPA back in December. Excuse me. The State Implementation Plan has to pass review by the EPA. That is, you have to pass at least the laugh test with the EPA. And even then, that's not the final word, because people can sue if they don't like what's required. That is, if they don't think it's going to work and they can convince a court that it doesn't pass the laugh test, the court will reverse it, tell the EPA to do something different. And that's happened repeatedly in the Phoenix area, particularly in the context of PM10 regulation. They've been fighting with this since 1990, and the story goes on. And if you don't submit a SIP in time, and if it doesn't work, and if you don't do the things that you promised to do, then bad things happen. The EPA bumps you up from moderate to serious to severe to extreme non-attainment, and there's more pain associated with each one of those steps. And the thing that gets everybody real excited is when the EPA threatens a cutoff in federal highway funding. Then you're talking billions of dollars, and it's lots of people's jobs. And again, the underlying concern is addressing public health issues, but when they start talking about money, people get truly excited. Again, this isn't a new issue in the Apache Junction area. Going back to 1988, the EPA focused on a map that suggested that Apache Junction was part of the Phoenix urban area. They designated a Group 2 area. In 1990, the Congress amended the Clean Air Act, and they said everyone who is in this Group 2 designation is designated non-attainment by operation of law. And the affected area was Township 1 North Range 80s. That is the 36 square miles from Barkley and McDowell to Baseline and Meridian. In 1996, by virtue of the fact that there was still an ongoing failure in Phoenix to attain the standards, the EPA bumped the area to serious non-attainment. In 2006, the EPA again found that Phoenix still isn't meeting the standards. They imposed a finding of failure to attain, and under the Clean Air Act, that triggers a requirement for yet another more stringent SIP. It's a 5% requirement. So across the Phoenix metropolitan area, you need to assess how much dust is being emitted on an annual basis and start ratcheting that down 5% a year until you finally solve the problem. Now, if you've got a growing community and you need to be reducing emissions, this starts to sound like a real challenge. And MAG has gone through a process. in part with the support of the legislature adopting Senate Bill 1552, which mandated that a whole variety of people do a whole variety of different things. Generally, these measures apply to the 5% reduction, the PM10 reductions. Some of the mandates apply to cities, some of the mandates apply to counties. The geographic scope varies. Some of them apply to all of Maricopa County. Some of them apply to the municipalities that are within the non-attainment area. Some apply to Maricopa County. Some apply to Pinal County. And within Pinal County, even, there are 3 affected areas. There's the Township 1 North, Range 8 East. There is Area A, which the legislature defined several years back in order to define the new auto emission testing area. And here in the red box at the top, you can see the 1 North 8 East designation. That's 36 square miles. Area A is a series of townships. That's about 324 square miles. And there are mandates within 1552 that also apply to municipalities that are within Area A, which would be Queen Creek and Apache Junction, to the extent that you have annexed outside of the non-attainment area. All of which is very confusing. I've got a spreadsheet worked out in real fine print to figure out who's supposed to do what and what's the geographic bounds. That is, if the county is adopting regulations, in some cases we're regulating in the city, in some cases it's the city that regulates within the city and the county regulates outside of the city. So it's a mouthful to digest in 25 words or less. And I guess I'll turn it back to Shane.
Talking a little bit more specifically, 1552, as Don pointed out, this is spread out through the whole Phoenix Valley here. There's 80 new provisions in this 40-page legislation document here. There's around 30 impacted cities and towns, so we're not the only one here going through this pain. It's throughout the whole valley here. Many deadlines are for the revisions or updating or drafting new revisions to existing ordinances or drafting new ordinances or rules to be enacted by 31st of March 2008. And these are, like Don said, in addition to past city and county commitments. The last time I was here was back in summer, last summer, having to do with some of the commitments that Meg asked us having to do with dust control. Some language taken right out of 1552, and this is one of the sections in that draft ordinance. Prohibit the operation of ATV use on an unpaved surface that is not public or private road and is closed by the owner or regulation for proper posting of land is private. And then also another section in there has to do with the haul trucks. Essentially, this is an extension of an existing Maricopa County rule. Many of you have seen a lot of trucks, haul trucks, come through Apache Junction. They're already tarped where they're used to it. Whenever they cross the border into Maricopa County, they need to be tarped. So essentially, this is just extending that into Apache Junction with tarping requirements for haul trucks. And bulk material are materials that would be capable of fugitive dust. That has to do with a lot of aggregates, gravel, dirt, essentially that type of bulk material that we're looking at with that. Some mandated city and county measures. We've looked at our dirt road paving plan. We've actually, when I was here in the middle of 2007, in the summer of 2007, we went from 4 to 6 miles. We raised our commitment to 6 center lane miles of stabilizing dirt roads in the city of Apache Junction, which we're shooting for the end of 2009 to actually complete our current inventory of 18 miles of dedicated dirt roads. Use PM10 certified street sweepers, City of Apache Junction. We're sitting good with that with our own operations. All of our street sweepers are PM10 certified, so it's just a matter of making sure that for the contractors that we hire that they use PM10 certified street sweepers, as well as the county for PM10 certified street sweepers. Stabilize unpaved shoulders. I think everybody knows, you've probably seen in the papers, we started stabilizing the most highly trafficked alleys in town here. Also, we're planning to do some of our shoulders that have a lot of current traffic on the shoulders or that have an estimated average daily traffic load of 2,000 vehicles per day. And hopefully we'll be doing that here in end of February into March. Public Works will be tackling that. And then also there's some restriction on leaf blower use by just city, county staff using leaf blowers in blowing mode during high pollution advisory days. We can use them in vacuum mode on those days, but city staff, county staff cannot use in blowing mode. And then also a restriction for all persons, operators of leaf blowers, all person, including city staff as well as citizens, not to blow debris into the public right away. And a lot of cities have actually already passed that, having to do with stormwater pollution mandates, you know, blowing debris and garbage into the stormwater structures, the gutters of the roads. So that now is being included into a PM10, the dust part of the legislation. And then, of course, number 5, covering haul trucks, which will impact our city operations, you know. And then also administratively, as part of this legislation, we need to report in July and December 2008, 2009, our progress with these implementing this legislation, number of fines, for example, the number of miles of streets, roads, stabilized, shoulder stabilized, et cetera, any other information relevant to enforcement or with this particulate measures. And then I just want to include this. This is on top. A lot of things here having to do with public works stabilization. This is already on top of existing maintenance street projects that we usually try to do every year. As you can see there, a lot of chip sealing, a lot of slurry seal we do, a lot of crack filling that we do, and this is on top of that heavy maintenance load that we've been trying to do for this last couple of years.
Does that help us turn what we are doing into EPA?
Some of that, when it comes to like paving the dirt roads, would be applied to the PM. Mainly, I wanted to put this number 7 in here, just showing that we're trying to balance.
All this information even help to show them, hey, look the efforts we're making.
It might, yeah.
Since you're fighting a losing battle.
No, that's a good suggestion, Vice Mayor. That might be helpful in that report. And of course, other capital improvement or new construction winding street projects, of course, that Public Works does already. And then also, we're getting back to some of the commercial / industrial property dust proofing part. And I'll let Don talk a little bit about this. He could talk a little bit more eloquently, so I'll let him jump in here. But this is one that as I mentioned at the beginning, there's some overlap with the county as well as the city on this. We have a sort of a dual jurisdiction on our properties within the city. And then also, with this ordinance, I wanted to mention here too, just in case I forget at the end, is I'm looking to come back probably February 19th with a final draft for your consideration at the regular meeting or public hearing. If not, March 4th during a regular meeting for consideration and adoption. So I just wanted to let you know we're just discussing here tonight, giving you some background, answer any questions that you have, and then we'll be back with the final draft here in a couple weeks.
Shane, who would enforce this?
Good question, Jeff. The primary enforcement authorities is going to be PD when it comes to, for example, some of the ATV use, yes.
So hopefully we would, like on the leaf blowers, we would look.
That would be, a lot of that might be a partnership with PD, it might be Public Works staff. We have our inspectors, we see people, we will stop and educate. We won't necessarily ticket them, have the authority to ticket them, but we'll educate. PDCs, of course, they'd be able to do that specifically when it comes to the leaf blowers. When it comes to on-site stabilization of properties, that's more of development services. And I know Brad Stinky, I believe, is here, as well as Chief Kelly, so they can maybe speak a little bit more if you have any more particular questions on some of the enforcement.
So this is all being forced by the feds, so if this council doesn't really agree with it,
we don't have a choice.
Well, I'm showing where we would have choices, like with the ridiculousness of not running leaf blowers. I would hope that we would. I would hope that we wouldn't turn ourselves in for someone running a leaf blower. That's.
It's part of the state statute.
I would hope that we wouldn't turn ourselves in for running a leaf blower.
They're still running them in Mesa.
Yeah. There's some.
That's big government out of control there.
There are some paramount challenges with this legislation, and I think some of these challenges won't work out until we start implementing, and we're going to be working hand in hand with Pinal County. I'll be working closely with Brad and Chief Kelly, and you're absolutely right. There's some challenges, and Mesa has some of these portions of this ordinance already passed, and they still have. You'll see some vacant lands posted out there, and you'll see ATVs still out there, you know, ripping up the dust.
Okay, thanks.
At the risk of extending the evening even further, if I could just touch on leaf blowers for a moment. I think there are really only two sets of mandates in here. One is with respect to cities and counties both, and that is to prohibit anybody from blowing material out into the street ever at any time, which is, that's pretty hard to take issue with. I mean,
Yeah, because they go down the gutters. I've seen them in the gutters, and they just get it out of the gutter either way.
well, to blow it into the street and
Yeah.
have it get chewed up by traffic is certainly not consistent with trying to clean up the air. And the other mandate is really directed specifically to the counties, and that's because the city said they didn't want any part of enforcing it. And that is to prohibit using a leaf blower on an unstabilized surface. And I've got pictures from some developments south of here where, as part of getting the project ready, they had a crew of guys out there with leaf blowers just blowing clouds of dust all over the place. And it looks goofy, I mean, is the best characterization I could offer. But that's one that the city said they didn't want to touch, so enough of leaf blowers. This is a measure that grew out of the fact that I'm sure you've seen that in the Phoenix metropolitan area, the primary bad boy or culprit that's been tagged for raising dust has been the construction industry, the home building industry, the development industry. And they were protesting mightily that they're not the only ones. That is, if they were the only ones, the problem would have been fixed, because they got fined, what, $5 million plus in Maricopa County last year. Now, we've got a much kinder and gentler program. We bark a lot more than we bite, but over there, they're biting real hard. And they protested and said, we're not the only ones. They said, we need to address some of the sources that are not regulated by permit. And they specifically looked at, take industrial yards, parking lots that are unpaved, at facilities that aren't otherwise permitted, either through the construction process or through an industrial permit. And they came up with a statutory mandate, and again, this isn't the feds doing this. This is the Arizona State Legislature trying to keep the feds happy, and the mandate's from the legislature. And there's a 4-option dust-proofing requirement: asphalt, concrete, chip sealing, or something that is approved. And right now, they're deliberating in Maricopa County whether or not they're going to also require EPA approval for that 4th option. That is to say, something we like at home. And the catch is, once you adopt these provisions and submit them to the EPA and they're approved by the EPA, they then become federally enforceable. And there's a provision in the Clean Air Act called anti-backsliding that says once the EPA has approved it, you can't get rid of it without the EPA's permission. So this is kind of a one-way street. In any case, the legislature mandated that within the city adopt such an ordinance, and within the county adopts such an ordinance. They are supposed to be on the books by March 31st, and they're supposed to be, enforcement is supposed to start on October 1st. There's still discussion going on in Maricopa County as to how they're going to implement this. So we're moving forward with it. Certainly, we need to report to the legislature by the 1st of July whether or not we have it on the books, and the law says it's supposed to be enforced as of October 1st. We did work with the city to come up with some possible canned alternatives, if you will, and that would be a couple inches of coarse gravel, nothing with fines in it. I believe using asphalt millings would be an option. We even proposed to include going out and testing the ground. I'm sure if you contrast going out in pancake silt out here in the desert versus getting up on the hillsides around here where it's pretty rocky material, there's really no incremental emission reduction benefit that you gain by paving rock. On the other hand, if you're out here where there's a lot of silt and fluff, there's a huge benefit to be had. So that's what we've got as a proposal at this point. We still have not started the formal process at the county, which requires publishing in the Arizona Administrative Register, and we've got about close to a 90-day process to actually adopt rules, and we still have not started that, so we're not going to make the March 31st date. We'll certainly have something in place and enforceable by October 1st. So.
And this, I'm sorry, Your Honor, this enforcement multifamily 4+ unit, checking what will they have to do? It says And commercial by October 1st,
Put
2000.
down-
Stabilizer?
Put down a dust-proof surface, and the first three options are hot mix asphalt, Portland cement concrete, or chip sealing on parking areas, ingress and egress areas, working areas at yards.
And this is what you're saying you can't backslide on?
Right.
Who promoted that?
The home building industry and the construction industry were
Then
absolutely
they should be
insistent.
required to install that when they build the house, because that's not easy.
But this does not apply to just new construction. This applies to existing
I
facilities.
realize that, but every time there's something new built, they're still gonna have to, I guess most of them will put asphalt in that, not all of them, but, man, I know a lot of these that are, I guess they're all gonna be looking for that chip seal. I think that's probably the cheaper one. There's utilities under there and everything, you can be digging up.
I fully appreciate that to implement a requirement like this consistently, even for new development, is going to be painful. It's going to be very painful to go back and retrofit the existing facilities. I'm sure you don't have
Yeah.
to drive very far in any direction before you start finding dirt parking lots and stuff out there
Your Honor.
that literally fits within this.
Yes.
In work sessions, can we just interrupt and talk informally, or should we always go through you?
Please go through me.
Okay. You just said that crushed granite would be acceptable, right? We've got stone quarries out here in this end of town, like, we've got lots of them. Is that acceptable? And it says if approved by the city or town, so if we approve that,
Approved stabilization.
then that would be up to us to approve?
The practical qualifying limitation that I would have would be that it has to pass the LAF test as being dust-proof. That is, to suggest that, I know I've seen some of the roads out here built up with what they call capping mix, that they bring in a mix of ABC and nice clay, and they lay it down on the road, and it makes for a nice material to blade out. But when people drive down it, it raises clouds of dust. Now, to suggest that something like that is a dust-proof surface it's hard to accept from a technical perspective. But the statute literally does provide some latitude to cities, and there's a lot of discussion going on. I've heard suggestion that the intent was to provide a diversity of results, and we're talking about a mandate that extends from Buckeye to Apache Junction, and you've got, 25 or 20 or some good number of municipalities, plus the two counties across the metropolitan area who are all reading the same thing. And in fact, that was the genesis of the discussion with Shane and the Public Works Department here, was that it seems like a legitimate objective that we should at least try to coordinate on this end of the valley, so we're not doing completely different things on opposite sides of the same street. So we've been trying to coordinate so that we at least look like we're on the same page. But there's a lot of other people who are looking at the same mandate, and I'm not aware of a consensus that's evolved at this point as to what things should look like. I know Maricopa County hasn't adopted anything yet.
Chip?
Well, I was going to ask about the crushed granite, and it was confusing to me. Can we use crushed granite, or can't we use crushed granite?
Have to run it through a lab to see if it passes.
If you're talking on a parking lot?
If you're talking about taking granite and you've got particles, chunks that are a quarter inch and larger, I would say that that's probably a reasonable way to approach this. On the other hand, if you're talking about decomposed granite, for example, it's my understanding that if you run enough traffic on it, it continues to pound down until you wind up with little tiny stuff that generates dust again. If you're talking about true hard granite, it's not going to decompose. It's kind of a function of how are you going to use it. Are you going to run heavily loaded forklifts and 18-wheelers over it at 50 miles an hour? Or is this going to be surfacing for a long-term storage lot where you're parking a boat trailer that doesn't move once a year? It's a sliding scale. Yes, it could work, but will it work in all cases? Probably not.
Yeah. I guess it always irritates me when EPA looks at the nation and then they pick out one area that's really bad, such as the Southwest, and want us to meet those standards. But who, out of these 20 or 30 cities, have we ever gotten together and discussed certain options as to try to meet these standards? And when was the battle? Was the battle 5 years ago, or
lower the standards?
The precedent that led to this particular mandate is the fact that in the city of Phoenix, they have an ordinance in place that basically requires dust proofing, or so they say. On the other hand, it's not altogether clear that they're rigorous in enforcing it. But when the legislature adopted the mandate, they didn't really provide a qualification for being lax in enforcing it. They just said the cities in the county have to do it. So there were extensive discussions, and in all reality, there wasn't an awful lot of discussion. There were committee meetings held, not committee meetings, but work sessions. Carolyn Allen and John Huppenthal hosted sessions down at the legislature, and all of the lobbyists from all of the many people who were involved in all of this showed up and argued back and forth. And this got maybe 10 minutes worth of discussion in terms
that's
of
a
the
shame?
mandate.
Because see, what I look at is you did the multi-family. You pull in, you park, you back out. I don't see where the dust is created there. Now, if you're going to drive 300 yards down a dirt alley to get to a paved road, then there might be some dust. But at the complex itself.
But this grew out of the fact that the home builders have been feeling significant pain, and they were very interested in making sure that everybody shared in the pain.
So they lobbied, but it wasn't a fair lobbying, obviously. And what Shane told me is what they found more dust to be, and he was showing dirt fields and all that, was actually off city streets and actual roads. And when your chairman of your MAG could have a street sweeper and had it fully funded by a grant and then turns it down because he didn't want to fund somebody to run it, that's pretty sad. So,
Councilman Seals?
I asked this once before as well. This is a federal law.
Mandate.
Is it mandate? Is it the same everywhere in the United States?
The Clean Air Act requires uniform ambient air quality standards across the country.
Okay, how in the world can they enforce the same laws in a desert as they do in a forest?
Because that's how they do it.
They cut off your highway funding.
Well, isn't there a way, and I know this isn't a now solution, but, you know, Texas, Arizona, Nevada, we need to get together and go to these people and say, wait a minute, this is different. We're going to create more dust than Michigan and Ohio. That's just a simple fact. You know, if it's 10 is the allowable everywhere else, maybe it should be 20 here. I mean, it's just common sense needs to apply.
And the knee-jerk retort that I've heard to that is that your lungs don't know the difference. If it's bad for your health, it's bad for your health, whether you live in Ohio or you live in Arizona.
They don't care. Do you know our average here?
Pardon me?
Do you know our average here in Arizona? What has our average been over the past couple of years?
In Pinal County, we monitor air quality at 13 different sites, and we do have PM10 monitors here in Apache Junction. The monitors here don't exceed the PM10 standard.
That's
Now,
why I was
we do
told.
have monitors elsewhere in the county that have world-class numbers in terms of the problems that we've got. So we've got a diversity, but in Apache Junction, in fact, I would say generally speaking, in the desert areas of the county that are not being disturbed by economic activity or development, air quality is pretty good. I mean, unless you live next to a dirt road. I mean, if you're the last guy on a dirt road next to the stop sign and it's been chopped up into 160 and 640 and 1,280 houses, and all those people are driving past your house on a dirt road, then it's a problem. But I guess I'm getting off topic here.
No, I always thought they got us because they wanted to try to help equalize the area because we had cleaner air. It was an assumption.
You know, the map that roped Apache Junction into this process happened in 1988, and that was before my time. So.
Okay, thank you.
That's exactly why they wanted this.
What I said? Yeah, I
So
thought.
this is the commercial side. This is the fun side. Here comes the really good one. There we go. Residential. There's a requirement to stabilize parking, maneuvering, ingress and egress areas at existing residential properties. Now, there was a push to take this down to something under 1,000 square feet. They wound up with a mandate at 3,000 square feet. It's not altogether clear what should be affected, and the question that's come to my mind is, does this mean that if you park your horse trailer in your backyard, that's now a parking area and you need to stabilize your backyard? And we're back again to the same shopping list of options, hot mix asphalt, concrete, chip sealing, or other approved method. And again, this applies not just to new development, this applies to existing development.
But we would police ourselves, so that's where we could be lax on ourselves, correct?
You can be lax on yourselves, but be prepared to send the Joint Legislative Budget Committee a report on the 1st of July and the 1st of December that says we're not doing anything with this. And that's all going to wind up being packaged up, sent off to the EPA, because part of the mandate for these reports going to the legislature and then to the EPA has been that for all of the commitments that have been adopted across the Phoenix metropolitan area over the last number of years, nobody's been really keeping score about who's doing these things. That is, people have adopted commitments, but nobody's been following up to see what's really happening on the ground. And the EPA has directly suggested that the fact that the Phoenix area continues to violate the standards is a result of the fact that you've been sending us all these promises, but nobody's been doing these things. So they now have a scorecard.
Is there any idea on how you would measure this, or how you would even attempt to measure this 3,000 square foot?
Trying to define the affected area is part of the challenge to begin with. I think part of the proposal that we laid out is to at least say that if you can clearly distinguish one area from another, that is, if you put some white rocks out or something to say, here, this is my backyard and this is my front yard. Or if you put up some sort of physical barrier, or you put up a fence. In Phoenix, I'm told that they have an ordinance that literally applies to residential properties, but they regard the ordinance as only applying to front yards for purposes of enforcement. Now, that's not what the ordinance says, that's the way they read it, which gets back to the enforcement question again about how and what are you going to do with these mandates. And I would think even at the 3,000 square foot threshold, unless you've got a pretty sizable parcel, a 3,000 square foot driveway is a pretty big driveway, although if you're sitting on 5 acres or 10 acres or whatever it may be, I suppose you could certainly.
Yeah, if you're on an acre, even you could pretty much drive into your residence in less than 3,000 feet usually.
If it's a driveway into a garage, it's going to be hard to get that to 3,000 square feet. But if you start, if you're running a backhoe business out of your backyard and you've got two 18-wheelers and a couple of 10-wheelers and a backhoe in your backyard, and it's in fact a commercial working yard, maybe those folks shouldn't be exempted from this process. But
Well, it's not even if it's a commercial working yard. I mean, Chip's got a horse trailer. He would qualify for the 3,000. I've got a flatbed that I carry a car on, or a car dolly. I have over 3,000 square foot of driveway. I mean, it's...
Just gave yourself and write that down.
Yeah, write that down.
And your address is?
Yeah, exactly.
It's, I don't know, so you're telling me I would have to put down 2 inches of crushed granite? And that would be minimal, acceptable?
No, we have to determine that yet.
I'm suggesting that it is up to you as council members to fulfill your obligation to adopt something that follows the legislative mandate.
Wow.
The facts, nothing but the facts, yeah. On which note, leaf blower restrictions, I can jump to the side and turn it back over to Shane, I guess.
I think we just clarified that a little bit earlier. It's going to be mainly the operations of the city, towns or county when it comes to our staff using leaf blower in high pollution days, and then it bans any person for throwing debris into public roadways, which I don't foresee as a big issue. It's just a lot of cities have already done that related to stormwater pollution anyway, with keeping debris, garbage out of the roadways. Just go back, sorry. And then when we start getting into the county here, Don, maybe explain this a little bit more. He mentioned too about the leaf blowers on unstabilized surfaces, and then also in this legislation, there's some things that apply just to county, but they apply to us, being that Pinal County controls the air quality, their regulations when it comes to construction and everything like that is changing too. So Don will explain a few of those things that will be seen differently here.
Yeah, item 2 up there is that ADEQ's got an educational program going on because the people who sell, rent, and use leaf blowers insist that the entire solution to leaf blowers is more education. So ADEQ's got a mandate to develop an educational program. From the county's perspective, the things that need to be done by March 31st is but the tip of the iceberg that is still coming down the pike here. By virtue of the fact that Apache Junction is within a serious non-attainment area, and there were plans submitted by the city and the county back in 1991. There was another set of plans submitted, the severe area plans, in 1999. And the EPA has effectively sat on those. They've never acknowledged. That is, they acted upon and in many cases got sued over what was submitted from Maricopa County. But for this little 36 square miles over in Pinal County, there were plans submitted and the EPA's never acted on them. But what they have given us is an unequivocal mandate. They actually did a partial disapproval of Pinal County's rules as they pertain to construction in Township 1 North, Range 8 East, the 36 square miles. And what they've told us is that we need to develop construction rules that are the most stringent combination of what they have in Maricopa County, Clark County, Nevada, and San Joaquin Valley, California, and implement those in Apache Junction. And in 1552, the legislature also now requires that for, and this is in 1 North 8 East again, for construction sites over 5 acres, you need to have training for basically everybody that is in charge of doing anything. Your water truck drivers, your site superintendent need to be dust trained. You also need to have a dust coordinator on site whenever you're moving dirt. That is, somebody's job it is to go out and bark at people on site, so they're calling for self-policing. We're also supposed to start registering subcontractors that are working in 1 North 8 East. Maricopa County is developing these programs, and when it comes time for us to do it, which is really supposed to be soon, I'm going to nod my head and say whatever they do there is fine here, because we're not going to develop new dust training programs for as much construction as there is going on in 1 North 8 East. Although there...
You're the man. You're the man. You didn't say it.
We do have other issues in the rest of Pinal County, but this is, again, the air quality here is relatively clean, so we need to do what the legislature's mandated that we do, but...
This, Don, I'm not trying to prolong the meeting, it's long enough, but as far as these dust blowers, I mean, we have some subdivisions around the town, I'm not naming anybody, but they'll have their HOA will have
cleanup
crews or lawn service people come in, and there they are. I mean, you can, that's
it's worse.
And they blow them out in the street. I mean, in the morning they go to work.
Well, you will now have an ordinance that tell them they can't blow it in the street. Who's going to enforce it is a different question.
They don't have ones.
And it'll be my job to make sure.
Suck it up as well as
they do, but they cry crocodile tears about they don't work, and I don't know one way or the other.
You'd be emptying them every minute.
Yes.
You'd mentioned the street sweepers that are owned by the city have to be meeting the PM10. What about the private companies that go out here and sweep out the parking lots?
No, right now it doesn't apply to those private companies, only if they are engaged or contracted through us for our work, which would principally be on the right-of-way or our city municipal properties. For a parking lot out here, for example, that would have to be PM10 certified, being that's part of
But not at Village.
So in other words, the old Village Inn parking lot, you go by there on a Friday night late, and there's a little thing going around, and you can hardly see the buildings from the dust that's in the air.
And that we can't enforce that?
And we can't enforce that.
Not the way the current legislature. I'm not sure if we might have some other current dust
it's pretty
provisions,
bad.
I think, in our books having to do with dust that might fall under a different, provisions that we currently have. Because I know we've used other provisions having to do with ADVs, with causing dust and things like that.
Any more questions?
One quick question.
One quick question. Okay.
This deterrent that you might put down to help stabilize them, do we know what it's made of? Is it healthy to breathe and all that, or is it chemicals, or what is it? Do you know?
Are you talking about the chemical organic stabilizer liquid that you could put down?
Spray alleys. How do we know that it's healthy to?
Well, I know they have tight EPA regulations having to do with pollution, with groundwater leaching into the ground. So I know there's strict EPA regulations on that.
As far as the air, you would assume?
Yeah, I think it's good common sense not to be around when anything is being mystified up in the air. So, but I have an opinion on that dust chemical organic stabilizer too. Yeah, it may work very temporarily, but it doesn't take much traffic at all before it rips through the little half-inch surface, and all of a sudden you have dust again. So that's something that I sure don't advocate coming from Public Works as a solution.
If you drive up Apache Trail where the pavement ends, the state has done it up there from Fish Creek Hill on.
Oh, really?
Any more questions for Shane? Gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you, Don, for taking your time. Okay. Discussion on cargo containers regulations, and that's Brad been waiting in the back patiently.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm going to try to keep this as painless as possible. Before you in your packet, there's a memo I put together which gives you a laundry list of standards that you're going to have to address when you or if you decide to introduce cargo containers into residential and commercial areas. You recall several months ago, staff brought to you an ordinance that you had requested an ordinance draft for the use of cargo containers. There was some criticism of staff that we substituted our opinions on certain standards for what we were hearing from you. So what we are really looking for you to do tomorrow night is to go through this list and try to help us define, the size of these things, the length of these things, the height of them, where they're located, how they're used, so then we can quickly take that information, craft an ordinance to bring back to you on February 19th. So I don't really know that we need to go through all of those tonight, but that's kind of what we're expecting for tomorrow night, Mayor.
We should go through them tonight.
I have a question I got a call from a citizen today that just got a notice today, and they wanted to know how to respond. Can he ignore that until the 19th?
He's going to be here tomorrow.
I'm sorry, what?
I got a call from him, too.
Me too.
Yeah, let me explain to you what staff is doing. As you directed at, I think it was our last meeting, that anybody that was not in that prior list of property owners, we are to enforce. So we have identified these. Development Services staff has done what we call the long form work, and we've done them property by property, and when we get these completed, we send them off to the city attorney's office, who then will make a decision whether they're going to prosecute or not. From a practical standpoint, I'm not sure any of this is going to occur before the 19th of February.
Unless you want to have a special session.
No. I think he just wants to get his voice heard about the situation in general.
That may be.
Coming tomorrow night.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I went back and looked at the record of starting on August 7th and what was said about basically not doing anything with cargo containers as to enforcement. And it was a bit confusing. Each time you made the motion, sometimes it did include exactly who you were talking about. And I think there was some real confusion over it in the public. And I would just ask that if you do pass an ordinance, you not create new classes. Right now, you've got a class from 1988, 89, when it was first created. There are 2 or 3 of these cargo containers that are completely exempted from the rule excluding cargo containers. So that's one class. And we're not talking zoning.
Okay. Joel, I believe there is one, though, in the community that went through the whole formalization of...
I think there's
the
2 or
league.
3.
Okay. So
And
those won't be affected.
Those are completely exempted. Even if you
All
put
right.
something in here that said they're not, I think legally that would be struck down.
Okay, all right, thank you.
The issue is, if you're going to exempt out certain ones, don't create a class of, well, okay, anything from 88 to August 7th of last year, they can do what you're going to allow them to do, but anybody who brought it in after that time, that could cause some real enforcement issues, and there may be some legal issues there, which I don't really want to discuss publicly.
Okay.
Any more questions for?
So,
Do you wanna
could
wait till
just
tomorrow night?
Real quickly, again, you want to know size, you want to know...
It's all in the book, all right? It's really, really nice.
I'm just trying to get it from the man.
Yep.
As much information from us is what we're looking for as possible.
Yep, we can, you give us what you want, and we do a better job of getting you what you want in the form of the ordinance.
Because honestly, when we sent it to you, I was hoping to get your professionalism on it, the things I never even thought of, hopefully, that might work.
Well, we hope we've identified all of the types of standards and issues that may pop up with this. And then the trick now is getting that direction from you and then putting in legislative form that makes sense for the future. Understanding there's issues that we haven't thought of that are going to come back and face it.
Okay, tomorrow night.
All right?
Thank you.
We got to remember we have to reconvene our executive session, so I'll call for adjournment.
Will you put this together? Minimum lot size? 3 different options. Maximum number of containers?
Oh, is this right?
Yeah.
I was up there reading it, and then I got called, and